Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I still see people joining. This session is going to be partly a replay of a recorded session, but there's a team of people to do handling of questions and so forth. So Ken Strickland and Brandon Wilkie are dialed in from the United States, and Mike Moss from the UK. Sorry, I just don't know what possessed me to say dialed in. How 20th century. Okay, so with that, let me hand it over to, I think Ken's starting to play the pre-recording video. Yeah, questions, if you put them in the chat room first, and then we'll get to them at the end. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Nigel. My name is Ken Strickland. As Nigel mentioned, we have pre-recorded this, so we ask you to hold questions to the end. If you have a question that you really don't want to hold to the end, just go ahead and let us know. We can pause the playback and go from there. So with that, I'll start the playback. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone. My name is Ken Strickland. I'm a software implementation specialist for 21st Century Software. I will be joined by Brandon Wilkie, who is a TDMF software developer. We will be discussing the 5 challenges you didn't know TDMF could solve. Just a reminder of the Conference 2021 charity raffle. Please consider showing your appreciation by kindly donating to our charities this year. The 2 charities are Royal National Lifeboat Institute and Guide Dogs for the Blind. Then follow the link on your receipt and enter your receipt number and amount donated to the GSE raffle. You will get a raffle entry for every pound donated. Thank you. What we will cover today, we'll first discuss why you need non-disruptive data migration. Then we'll talk about the 5 things you probably don't know TDMF can do. Then we'll provide some key takeaways as to product functionality and performance. So what is the business value of TDMF? Why do customers need non-disruptive data migration? Let's talk about it in a little more details. So what are our clients telling us? Most of our clients are telling us they need to upgrade to new hardware for cost and stability, and they need a non-disruptive way to move the application data. We have other clients telling us we need to move a large amount of volumes, say upwards of 15,000 volumes, and we need to be able to do it fast. We have other clients telling us we need to relocate the data center, and we need to do it with the least amount of downtime. We also have application developers asking us, is there an easy way to copy ZOS data volumes to a ZDNT environment? And we also ask, is there any way to upgrade our storage for Linux guests running under VM without taking down the application? Well, TDMF can do all of this and more. So what is the value of TDMF? TDMF is a faster, better, smarter volume migration process that provides the following. 1, we provide you a faster way to complete your migration project. We do this by allowing you to migrate up to 15,000 volumes in a single TDMF session. 2, we think we're better because we have a proven method to migrate your data with confidence. We've successfully completed over 2,500 data migrations. And 3, we provide a smarter way to migrate application data without data disruption. TDMF will move mainframe data effectively with optimal application availability. We are vendor neutral. TDMF provides local and global data migration for storage attached to IBM Z mainframes across multi-vendor environments with continuous business operations. TDMF and ZBM Agent for TDMF. We're linking the past to the future. In April 2018, IBM and 21st Century Software entered into an IPP partnership agreement, where 21st Century Software will provide ongoing product development, product maintenance, product enhancements, and all level 3 support. We have since upgraded the product to version 5.8 in October of 2018, then to version 5.9 in October 2019, and just last month to 5.10 October 2021. Some of the enhancements include ZOS 2.4 support in 2019, improved reporting, and I/O buffer pool enhancements. In 2020, we added DevOps support where we provide a simplified way to copy your ZData volumes to your ZD&T development systems. We also performed a large-scale test verification with 15,000 volumes running concurrently. Just last month, we upgraded the product to version 5.10. This new version includes ZOS 2.5 support, an option to automate JCL generation for your master and agent jobs. We've also added a monitor for the VM agent under CMS, and we've also upgraded the copy process to support ZHPF, where the copy runs in transport mode instead of command mode, which results in faster run times and improved performance. So now let's look at the TDMF overview. I will provide a TDMF overview, talk about some of the features and functions of the product, and then walk you through an implementation process with sample screenshots of each of the functions. TDMF overview. TDMF runs as a batch job. You have master and agents that also run as batch jobs. It uses Syscom dataset to coordinate updates, and it's controlled by the monitor, the batch job, or the ZOS console. TDMF provides a non-disruptive DASD migration. As can be seen on this slide, we have one TDMF master and 3 TDMF agents. Again, they're each batch jobs running on the respective LPARs. The TDMF Syscom communication dataset is on a DASD volume, not part of the source or target volumes that you're using for the migration. And again, it's controlled by the TDMF ISPF monitor. You can control it by submitting a batch job, or you can control it by modify commands to the ZOS console. TDMF solution features. TDMF provides a non-disruptive data migration at the volume physical track level. It also provides a non-disruptive swap from old device to the new device. This can be dynamic or it can be controlled with the prompt command. It also provides a switchback facility. Monitor swap volumes for updates and have migration switch back to the original volumes. This is used with the approval parameter of the product. And we can also migrate between different size volumes, small to large and large to small, rules apply, with dynamic ICK DSF invocation. TDMF solution features continue. TDMF is vendor agnostic. It works with leading DASD manufacturers with awareness of individual replication technologies. That's controlled by allow mirror change parameter of the product. We provide pacing, which prevents TDMF I/O from affecting application performance of volumes being migrated, automatically controlling the data transfer rate from 15 tracks to 1 track based on the device I/O rate. We are hyperswap aware. TDMF will dynamically disable and enable hyperswap via commands to migrate GDPS and PPRC volumes. We use the latest DS8K integrity features, which guard against unidentified LPAR access, meaning if you have an LPAR that has access to one of the volumes you're migrating, it's going to give you a message indicating that there's no agent running on that LPAR. We support the query host access. We provide SPID fencing during the migration and soft fencing post-migration. And we also provide a wizard that can make copies for ZD&T testing. TDMF will basically copy your ZOS volumes to your DevOps testing on the ZDP test environments. TDMF solution advanced features. TDMF provides point-in-time volume copies. Copies are typically used for full volume or application backups, or they can be just used for additional copies for testing. TDMF also provides a TCP/IP migration function, which is used to perform long-distance migrations, data center consolidations, or just DR testing setup. TDMF phases. TDMF operates in 8 different phases, and I'll highlight each of the phases here. The first phase is initialization. During this phase, all participating systems must perform error-free validation for all volumes within the session. It checks to make sure all the agents are running, and it also checks that the volume pairings have been set up correctly. Once this phase is completed, it goes into activation. During this phase, the TDMF I/O monitor is enabled, and the copy task is started for each volume pair. The copy process copies source to target volumes asynchronously. Once the initial copy has been completed, it goes into refresh mode. That mode, multiple refresh phases can occur until TDMF determines that the synchronization of the target volume can be achieved, at which time the master system will signal a quiesce of the source volume. This is controlled by the sync goal parameter of the product, and the default is 5 seconds. Once it goes into quiesce mode, TDMF will inhibit read and writes from all systems to the source volume. Then it goes to synchronization mode, which collects the final set of updates from the source volume and applies it to the target volume. Once that's completed, it either swaps or backs out the process. During a swap, the I/O is redirected to the new source volume, the original target. If a failure occurs during the redirect phase, any volumes that have been redirected must be backed out, reversed back to the original volume. And then it goes into the resume or terminate. Immediately after a successful I/O redirect process, user I/O continues to the new device. Final cleanup takes place and all fixed storage frames are freed, and then it's terminated. TDMF functions. TDMF provides 2 different functions, migrate and replicate. Both functions provide a non-disruptive DASD migration. They're vendor neutral, and they can go from smaller to larger devices. For the migrate is a local swap only. It's typically used for technology refresh, DASD consolidation, or tuning load balancing type projects. It's local only. It does a dynamic swap from the old to the new device, and you can run multiple sessions. We've tested 15,000 volumes in a single session. The replicate function is a local and or remote function. It's typically used for disaster recovery setup or data center relocation projects. You can use it locally or remote TCP/IP. It does no swap. It's a point-in-time copy, and a reformat is required of the target volume. Here are some sample parameters that we use for typical data center migrations, and we want to focus on the prompt and the single parameter. Let's talk about common challenges for customers and how TDMF answers those challenges. We'll go through some use cases and then provide sample solutions that TDMF provides for each of the use cases. So let's talk about the first challenge, technology refresh and volume consolidation. You got your storage admin indicating that this old DASD doesn't have all the new features we need, and it's causing application slowdowns. And we're also getting low on available UCBs. The IT manager is saying, well, we finally convinced management that we need to upgrade the DASD, but we don't have enough staff to do the migrations. The UCB constraints are holding up other projects too. It's a domino effect. Then the CFO is saying, we've made investment in the new DASD, but the longer we keep the old DASD on the books, the more we pay in maintenance. Then the operations manager is saying, the new DASD is installed, but we can't get time in the change windows for application outages to do the migration, and everybody's worried about what if something goes wrong? What is our fallback? Does this sound familiar? For the first challenge, we'll use the TDMF migrate function in a local swap capacity. I'll walk you through an implementation process using screenshots, and we'll concentrate on the prompt and the single group parameters. Okay, the next few slides I'm going to show you using screen prints of an actual implementation process using the TDMF migrate function local swap. In this example, we're going to migrate 5 volumes to new targets. The TDMF command is migrate. It's followed by the source volume serial number, followed by the target volume serial number. And the first thing I would do is you have to make sure that the source and target volumes are online to the ZOS operating system. To do that, you display the units. In this case, you can see that the devices for source and target are online. Once I've verified that, you can submit the batch job and start the TDMF monitor. In this case, we've gone into the TDMF monitor, entered option 1, which is a summary of the session, and this first box shows that this session is in refresh 1 mode, meaning that the copy is already completed and it's the first refresh cycle for the session. You can also note that it has sync volume needed on the top right-hand corner. This means that you have provided the prompt parameter for the session, meaning that you want to be prompted when to do the actual swap or cutover of the volume. Then you can hit option or PF10 to swap between options 1 and option 2. Option 2 is the bottom screen, which gives you the details of the session. And in this case, you can see that the first volume, the KS4F00, has an asterisk on it. That's where you enter the prompt command from. And because we're using the single group parameter, you notice that the group name is single, meaning that you only have to reply to the first volume. And in this case, you reply to the first volume with the asterisk on it. Once you have entered option 2 for the details of the session, and if you have a question as to what commands are available for that session, you can put the cursor on the command that you're interested, or the line of the command that you're interested in, and press F1 to display the options. In this case, you can see from the left side of the screen here is that we want to do a confirm. We want to synchronize the volume or its group, which is the option or the command of P or PG for prompt or prompt group. And in this case, as you can see on the right-hand side, we enter PG for prompt group. It tells you that, again, the confirmation is needed to sync the volumes. We enter PG, we press enter. It gives you the next screen on the bottom right-hand side, which says confirm that you want to synchronize this volume group. We enter yes and press enter. Once you've entered yes to confirm the synchronization of the group, you'll see this screen. It basically tells you up top that the reply was yes, and now tells you that this session is going into quiesce mode. Once the quiesce mode is complete, or quiesce phase is completed, it goes to synchronization, IO redirect, and then terminate and complete. And in this case, it shows that the session has been completed. It was a type of a swap, and the sync goal was 5 seconds. So you should always check to make sure that the status is complete. If you have a failure or something terminated, it will show otherwise, but it's important to make sure that the status does say complete. Once it's completed, you can display the addresses of the source and the target volumes. In this case, the bottom left-hand side shows the Able Fox 00, which was the target address, has the source vol SEER number on it. And you can also look at the source vol SEER, which is address 4F00, and see that it has the target vol SEER on it. So that means the session has successfully completed and the source and target volumes have been swapped. TDMF scalability for migration. One of the latest enhancements we've done is with scalability. We've enhanced the IO buffer pool management of the product so that we can now do thousands of volumes per session, where in the past we were only able to do hundreds of volumes per session. So for this scalability test, we tested 15,000 volumes and 200 terabytes of capacity. We had 100 terabytes of source capacity, which we migrated to 100 terabytes of target capacity. In this case, we set up 3 master sessions, each with 5,000 volumes. We ran the masters on 3 different LPARs. That was to increase the throughput. We started each session with 200 concurrent active copy processes. And we used the prompt and single options or single group options, meaning that we wanted to be prompted when we wanted to sync or swap the volumes, and we wanted to do them all as a single group. We waited until all sessions went into sync. In this case, our migration of 100 terabytes using 200 concurrent copies for each session took about 24 hours to complete. At that time, each of the 3 sessions went into sync mode, meaning requesting volumes to be synced. So once we get to that point of the copy process where the initial copy is done, we're starting the refresh process, so now we can sync all of the volumes together. At this point is when you want to suspend your DR position. It's no outage, it's basically just an aging recovery point objective, meaning what you want to do is suspend your PPRC environment or split your BCV volumes or whatever the case may be, but you have a gold copy, if you will, to recover after the swap. Once you do that, you stop all of your online and batch processing except for the TDMF jobs. So all online, all batches stop. The only thing running is the ZOS and the TDMF sessions itself. You reply to the sync prompt to all sessions. In this case, we have 3 different sessions running. The sync prompt is replied to within a couple seconds between the 3 prompts. In this case, for our test, it took about 45 minutes for us to go through 15,000 volumes and sync them together. So we have a consistency. Now, in a real implementation, you would take this opportunity to complete the special volume migrations, which is your local page data sets or your XCF files. But as we noted earlier, with 45 minutes to sync 15,000 volumes, you can do pretty much a whole data center migration with a 2 to 4 hour outage, depending on what type of special volumes you may have to do. At that point, you can resume your disaster recovery position on your new hardware. You're up on your new devices, and if you're going from vendor A to vendor B, you should have a DR position on the vendor B software at this point, or hardware at this point. And then anytime if there is issues or concerns, you always have your old DR position still available where you suspended prior to doing all this activity. TDMF migrate function local swap with approval. This is just another option of the TDMF migrate function. It allows you to address performance and configuration type issues. So whether you've previously migrated or you have performance issues on old hardware, you can use this process with the approval option to migrate to another device, monitor that new device after it's swapped to make sure your performance issues have been resolved, and then confirm the migration. And in this case, we're going to use the prompt command, and instead of the single group, we're going to use approval. TDMF migrate function local swap with approval. I'll now walk you through the process flow for using the approval option. It's the same syntax as the migrates with the volume, the source volume, followed by the target volume. And the parameters, again, are the same except for the single group we changed to approval. The next 3 screenshots basically show you the process of the initial copy, refresh, and sync. The first shows that the copy is started. You continue. Once the copy is completed, it goes into refresh 1 mode. At that point, it goes and tells you that a sync volume is needed, meaning that the copy process is done, and now we're ready for you to reply to the prompt to synchronize the volume. Once we're at the point where we see sync volume needed requested, we're able to swap the volume by entering the P on the requested action. It will ask you for a confirmation that you want to swap the volume. We reply yes, press enter, and then it goes into approval required state, meaning the device has already been swapped. You're operating on the new target volume, but it's still pending approval. At this point, you can see that you have approval required, meaning that the device has already been swapped, so you're operating from the new target device. And just to verify that that is the case, you can do a display units. And in this case, the AbleF20 has the original source volume serial number of KS4F20. So once you've identified or made sure that the performance issue that you are trying to resolve has been resolved on this new device, you have to approve the actual migration. So in that case, it's the option B for approval. We enter B on the command line that has the asterisk with the vol serial on it. It says approval request outstanding. You will get a confirmation of, do you want to confirm this? So you can either enter yes, I want to confirm it and make the swap permanent, or no, to go back to the original source volume. Once you've approved the actual migration, you'll see up in the top right-hand corner where the reply was yes, and now the migration goes into the terminating phase. Once it's terminated or completed, you can display the pass summary and see that the status is complete and the type was a swap. Just to verify that the process worked as designed, you can display the source volumes and the target volumes on the ZOS console. To do this, I displayed 4F20. You can see that it has the old target device serial number of KTAF20. And then on the target address of AbleF20, you see that it has the original source volume label of KS4F20. So now for the second challenge that TDMF can help you with, a business acquisition or a data center relocation. You've got the storage admin saying, I just found out we acquired another company and we need to migrate everything into our data center. He's talking with his IT manager who says, we're not getting any new staff with the company we acquired. We need to do this migration with our people and keep up with our regular work. And the CFO is saying, we bought more DASD to accommodate the company we just acquired. Now we need to get the data center moved quickly to reduce expenses. And then the IT manager is saying, I have no idea what the application requirements are for this new company. How do we coordinate this migration without major disruption? Has this happened in your company? Now for a third challenge. A hurricane is coming. You got your disaster recovery coordinator saying that a hurricane is coming up the coast and is supposed to make landfall in our area in 4 days. We are not ready. The IT manager saying we need to make sure we have a safe copy of our data at a DR site ASAP. The storage admin says, oh no, we need a really fast way to get a copy of our data to the DR site. That hurricane won't wait. And then the operations manager saying, this could be a major outage. They're expecting flooding, high winds. People are focused on keeping their families safe, not backing up data. It really does happen. To support the second and third challenges, we use TDMF Replicate. TDMF Replicate is a local or remote point-in-time copy of your data. It's typically used for disaster recovery testing setup or data center relocation. There's no UCB swap as part of the process. It copies the data, not the label or the volume serial number. And it requires ICK DSF reformat once you've completed to bring up the volumes at another site. Once you do the ICK DSF reformat, you need to be concerned with duplicate volumes. If you're at a local site, you need to either have an updated IODF or disable the interfaces to the old devices. Using remote TCP/IP requires TDMF software in both locations. You have to have master sessions running on both the source and the target environments. To walk you through the TDMF replicate function, we use the replicate command instead of the migrate command. It's the same type syntax, replicate with the source volume serial number followed by the target volume serial number. And the process is basically the same. We're going to use the prompt and the single group parameter as we did with the migrate. In this case, it shows that the second screen shows where the copy phase is started. The third screen shows where it's in refresh mode and the sync volume needed is requested, meaning that we have supplied the prompt parameter on our session parameters, and now it's waiting for us to reply to that prompt. Once our session gets into sync volume needed, we will swap to the details option, which is option 2. You can see that it's awaiting sync. The first volume serial number KS4F10 has an asterisk, meaning we have to put the cursor on that command line, enter prompt group, PG for prompt group, and then hit enter. We would get a confirmation of do we want to confirm this. We enter yes and press enter. At this point, you can see that the migration has completed. It shows the status of complete, shows the type of PIT or point in time, and it shows that it achieved a sync goal of 5 seconds. And just to make sure that you did not copy the volume label, you can display the source and the target devices. The source device on 4F10 shows a KS4F10 label. The target device of AbleF10 still shows the target label of KTAF10. Now, to make sure the data has actually been migrated, you can do a 3.4 of this target volume, in this case KTAF10, and you can see that the VTOC index shows the source volumes label of KS4F10. At this point, all you need to do is reformat the device. That's ICKSF reformat. The unit is the target device. You verify the target label, and then you replace it with the source label. At this point, your replication has been completed, and your volume is ready for use.
Thanks, Ken. This is Brandon Wilkie. I'll be taking a look at our fourth and fifth challenges. In our fourth challenge here, this is a typical challenge for many organizations. Say that you have application developers that need to update their ZDNT development environments to match latest production code or environment level. You could also have a similar need for your QA group needing to get their integration test systems up to reflect the latest production levels. In either of those cases, you have a need to have a method for easily replicating the source volumes you have on a ZOS system onto your target ZDNT production or QA systems. So how can TDMF help? So the ZDNT scenario here is actually a good use case for TDMF. It leverages an existing feature that was already built into TDMF, which was the remote migration over TCP/IP that Ken just demoed previously. So this is actually well suited for the ZDNT deployment. You can do the migration over TCP/IP, similar to how you do ZOS to ZOS to target a ZDNT system. One thing we did add to kind of make this a little bit easier was a new wizard interface into the ISPF interface to kind of make it easier to be able to build jobs for ZDNT. It is meant to help people who haven't used TDMF in the past or might be intimidated by the terminology or aren't familiar with it, kind of take away that learning curve for people who aren't familiar with TDMF that need to be able to use TDMF for these purposes. So this new mode of JCL generation was introduced in APAR 0A59805 in fall of 2020. And so let's take a look here, see how easy it is to use this interface to generate TDMF jobs from scratch for this purpose. So from the main menu here, select option 12. And what you see here is the remote migration wizard. This is what you'll see if this is your first time using the new TDMF interface after that APAR is installed. Otherwise, if you've already used the interface and changed your JCL generation mode to advanced mode, you may see that instead. You can toggle with the T command here back to well, on the screen, you're toggling from wizard mode into an advanced. If you see advanced mode, you can also use the T command to toggle back into wizard mode. So here we're looking at wizard mode, and the screen more or less just kind of gives you an overview of the process for new users. After you press enter on the introduction panel, this is the next screen you'll see. It's the dataset specification panel. Here, you need to specify the TDMF load lib and a syscom dataset. There's a lot of text here kind of explaining what that is. Again, this is targeted for people who haven't used TDMF a lot in the past, so it's very verbose. And should also mention there's a lot of help on the underlying help panels here as well for even more information. But again, kind of targeted at new users that aren't going to have to go and track down a user's guide to maybe get through their first migration here. So the load library dataset name here is pre-populated based on the environment that it was invoked from, but it can be manually overwritten if you need to. And the syscom dataset must be provided here. The syscom dataset is just a dataset that TDMF uses for cross-system communications and coordination for migrations. So next, you need to provide source volumes and target volumes that you're migrating to on the ZDNT system. You are required to specify at least one pair. You can specify up to 5 here, but do note that TDMF is going to do a full volume replication to these target volumes. So the target vol-zero contents will be completely replaced with the source volume contents. So be sure whenever you're targeting these target volumes on the ZDNT system that you're specifying either an empty volume or a volume that doesn't contain any information that you still need to hold on to. After the volumes have been defined, you need to provide information about the ZDNT system, including the sysname and IP address. So you'll also need to provide a pair of IP ports. The way TDMF does its IP port usage is you specify one port number and the next sequential number will be used as well for data transfer. So here we're using 8888 and it would also use 8889 as an example. So make sure that both of these, all these ports are available for you to use and that you don't have any firewalls in place that would prohibit any communication from the ZOS system to the ZDNT system. You'll also need to provide a dataset name for a second syscom dataset here. This is a syscom dataset for use on the target ZDNT system. So the final step of the wizard, you need to supply the names of all of the ZOS systems that may have access to the source volumes that are being copied. You need a TDMF agent set up for each one of those systems. The agents role in life is to monitor any access to your source volumes, see if there's any updates that are occurring to those volumes, and ensure that those updates get reflected onto the image that we're replicating onto the ZDNT system. After you complete the wizard, you'll see the first of 2 sets of JCL. This first set is a series of jobs that you submit on the source, so the ZOS system. The first job here is the TDMF master job, and if you specified agents on previous panel, you'll see that the remaining jobs, you'll see 1 job per agent, so it'll submit agent JCL for each one of the agents that you defined. So you can scroll through this and review the contents of these jobs and then submit the entire deck of all the jobs from this screen, or save it off if you want to save it to use later, just using ISPF copy. Once you're finished with the source system JCL, just press PF3 to exit. The next screen you'll see is the target ZDNT system JCL. So this JCL will need to be copied for submission and execution on the ZDNT system. But once you do that, and if you've already submitted the source system JCL on ZOS, the replication should begin immediately. Depending on what options you selected for prompting, you may need to still use the TDMF interface on ZOS to respond to confirmation prompts, or have a storage administrator do that for you. But that's generally all it takes to complete this ZDNT migration. So the 5th challenge we'll look at is to do with your ZVM systems. Let's say that your ZVM system hosts dozens of different Linux environments that all reside on a storage device that needs to be upgraded, and that you need to move all these VM guests onto a new storage device as soon as you can to avoid paying redundant maintenance costs, but you also can't afford to take an outage for the changeover because a lot of those VM systems host production systems. So how do you deal with this? The solution we'll propose for this problem is the TDMF ZVM agent. Prior to having a VM agent for TDMF, it was possible to migrate VM volumes, but you had to take any VM volumes offline, including any applications and possibly even entire systems that would need to be taken offline in order to do so. But by having the VM agent, the VM devices can all be swapped while your applications and systems remain online and uninterrupted. So this all operates a lot like how the ZOS master and agents work as related to the ZOS master. So you have a TDMF migration that's still controlled by a TDMF master system that runs on ZOS. And once you initiate a migration, the VM agent monitors devices from the VM perspective that are taking part in that migration and keeps track of any updates to those volumes. And if it does see an update, that's communicated back to the ZOS master system to ensure that those updates are getting mirrored appropriately onto the target volumes. So again, very similar to how it's done for ZOS. But kind of to reiterate, the key point of this is they're able to do all of this while the ZVM applications and guest systems, including Linux guest systems, remain online. Okay, so some additional details about the ZVM agent architecture. First of all, it's implemented as a VM server virtual machine and is capable of running multiple TDMF migration sessions concurrently. Every migration session uses its own TDMF syscom data set. That COM-DS is stored on an MVS volume, which is shared across all the systems that are participating in a migration. A ZVM agent session will run as a thread in the TDMF server virtual machine under ZCMS, and you can start a migration system with the session command. And the session command, you also provide the syscom dataset name and false here as parameters to that session command. And lastly, any of the Linux volumes that are being migrated must reside on eCKD disks and compatible disk layout. And we'll close out with the key takeaways: faster, better, smarter. Our improvements to support large-scale migrations has really cut down on the amount of time that it takes to complete a migration project. TDMF is a proven technology. It's been used in thousands of migrations successfully. Not only is it proven, it's constantly improving. We're always making changes to increase the speed of a migration and make it more reliable. And lastly, we provide a method for migrating without disrupting your production applications, which not only is it smarter, it's absolutely critical in many cases nowadays.
Okay, with that, I'm going to pause the playback and open up the floor for questions. You've got myself, Brandon, and Mike available for questions. So are there any questions?
Okay, you can now unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. I see there's a question in the chat from Brett Dukes.
Yeah, answered.
Oh, okay, yeah, you've answered faster than I can scroll.
Right.
Are you able to say a few words about TDMF 510?
Other than the, like I say, it was available in October. It supports 2.5. And then one of the biggest enhancements is the ZHPF mode of operation, where it copies the data in transport mode and instead of command mode. And I guess either Mike or Brandon, you want to advance or say anything additional about that?
This is Brandon's baby. He wrote the code, so he's probably best placed to give you the highs and lows.
Yeah, it is pretty transparent to the user. Really, it was implemented via a parameter, just a session parameter. The keyword is EHPF, so it's not enabled by default. But if you type that keyword into even existing TDMF JCL that you have and run that against 510, if your target devices support ZHPF, then we will try to use ZHPF to do the IO to the target device. So all the writes that are happening as a result of the initial volume copy or subsequent refreshes after that initial copy will be done in transport mode using ZHPF. And really, we see pretty significant performance improvement, or at least in reduced throughput, and will reduce the amount of time required to do a migration as well. So that was pretty much that. So.
There's like 4 or 5 more slides left in the presentation. So once the questions are answered, I'll continue.
Okay, well, people can still ask questions in the chat. So I guess, yeah, crack on.
With that, we'll open the floor up for questions. Let Ken or I know if you have questions for either one of us. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. Please do reach out to either Ken or I with any questions you may have. Our 21st century email addresses are in the form of first name, last initial at 21csw.com. So Ken S at 21csw.com or Brandon W. And thank you again for attending. Don't forget to leave session feedback. You can use the URL or the QR codes on the screen there to leave feedback. And finally, details on becoming a member of GSE UK. And yeah, thank you again for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your conference.
Okay, I'd dropped a link for the session feedback in the chat window. So that's there for you with the correct session. Okay. Any further questions? I don't see any outstanding questions in the chat window. So in that case, unless there's anything else to cover from the 21st Century Software folks?
No, I think we're done. Just want to thank everybody for joining the session.
Okay, then, yeah, I'll reiterate that. Thank you to the attendees, and thank you particularly to Ken, Mike, and Brandon from 21st Century Software for spoiling their vacation.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll now close the session. Thanks very much. Bye.
Okay, thanks, Nigel.